Lived in many countries and mixed with many men. I've shared the days of sunshine, gone with them in the rain. The fires at evening said we were brothers. The fires at evening said we were brothers. A soldier I saw weeping beside a dying friend. My officers had said I must hate him till the end. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers.
A man sat on a doorstep to see the children play. The gentle way he smiled there would charm your fears away. A stranger he but love made us brothers. A stranger he but love made us brothers. One day I climbed a mountain with friends of other lands. The words we used were different, but joy one understands. Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. Though words and customs vary like waves upon the sea, one life beneath the surface binds everyone to me. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. Then brothers, why endeavor to set ourselves apart? The fences we've been building squeeze tight upon our hearts. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers.
Well, good morning to you again, and a very happy Babaji's Commemoration Day, and also the first year celebration, the first anniversary of this center celebration. The Babaji Commemoration Day is a honoring of the meeting between Babaji and Master. When Master was in Calcutta, sent to America by Sri Yukteswar, Sri Yukteswar had said, "Go, the way is open, all doors are open to you now, it is now or never." And then Master was determined to go, but then he wanted divine reassurance. So he said, I don't know how often avatars seek divine reassurance when they have the divine consciousness already in them, but it's very helpful. In fact, you could say this is a role Master plays as an avatar, that he conceals that to some extent and acts just like one of us, because we can relate to wanting divine reassurance for something like, in this case, going across the planet to America. And he said that I be protected, that I be able to reach people and so on. And then Babaji came to him. The door of the room that he was meditating in opened, and in came Babaji, who he was seeing for the first time. And so he recognized the man, as he said, because he looked like a younger version of Lahiri Mahashaya. And so Babaji reassured him and also said, Kriya Yoga will spread in all lands. You are the one whom I sent to Sri Yukteswar for training to then go to the West. And he also added a few secret prophecies. And I wanted to explain a little bit about those secret prophecies, because they're not mentioned in the autobiography of a yogi. But Babaji said that it was Christ who appeared to him and said, let us together bring a new wave of self-realization to this world, both the East and the West. And why would they do that? Why would they pick this time now? We're glad that they did, but it's because it's our time. But why did they pick this time? One reason Babaji had said to Lahiri Mahashaya was that the cries of worldly men and women seeking God, seeking a higher life, have not gone unheard to the divine ear, you could say. So part of it is this prayer saying, okay, maybe in a previous age, in Kali Yuga, as Sri Yukteswar clarified the whole calculation of the yugas, that many people didn't want God, or if they did want God, they knew what to do. Become a monk, become a nun, find a cave, you're all set. I wish it were that easy, but certainly in terms of what you did outwardly, that's more or less what you had to do. Because society as a whole was so gross, you could say, so heavy, so materially minded. And there was a great deal also of unkindness towards others, and in ways that I don't wish to relive. But just to say that it's easy to see the change in growing sensitivity among mankind in general. As Swamiji pointed out when he was here in Chennai, that just even bullfighting, for example, has become less and less popular as a sport. But he said, it used to be very popular, and even worse things than that. And he said, I won't say we're very kind, but we're kinder than that. And so the other thing to see then is that why were the worldly men and women so-called crying out? Because we realize that what's needed now is to be able to live in the world and also live for God. Now, this is not an unknown model when you think of India, because traditionally throughout India's history we know that yes, there are sannyasis, but there are also saintly kings like Janaka. There are also rishis that had families and so on. It wasn't only that you had to be completely alone in a cave, but you could integrate these, and Krishna was married and so on. And so that need is needed in this new age because society is at a place where people living in the world can also seek God. And that divorce, you could say, is not necessary anymore. In fact, what is necessary desperately is a reminder to people in general about God and about the fact that He can be sought inside, not through standing on the street corner and screaming or waving anything, but rather by letting it flower, letting it emanate from the joy of our own souls. As Lahiri Mahashaya said, let the fragrance of Kriya flow, from the flower gently on its own. I'm badly paraphrasing his words in Autobiography of a Yogi. This was in response to his disciples saying, let's start an organization, Lahiri Mahashaya Incorporated, and spread this everywhere. And he said, let it just flow on its own. And yet it flowed, because there was a divine awakening happening, and souls who were ready, souls who were interested, were drawn. And then Sri Yukteswar was one of those, although it was not arbitrary. Again, he was an avatar, coming in purposefully into this age, not having many disciples, not having a big work outwardly. Swamiji asked Master, did Sri Yukteswar not have many disciples because he knew he wouldn't be coming back to earth? And Master said, that's right. That Sri Yukteswar reincarnated in the astral world on an astral planet, Hiranyaloka, as described in Autobiography of a Yogi. He said, here the souls can better work with my methods. It's almost like if you're like, one incarnation away from a Jivan Mukta, then you can take Sri Yukteswar's training. Sort of like graduate school, astral graduate school. But Master said, through converting me, he has converted millions. And of course, he didn't mean conversion in the sense of changing someone. Swamiji said, I never seek to convert anyone except to his or her own higher self. That's all that we can ever do anyway. And that's all he ever sought to do was, as one saint put it again in Autobiography of a Yogi, I know the joy of sharing. Is that such a sacrifice? In other words, people say, oh, it must be so troublesome for you to do this, or oh, I don't want to bother you, and so on. It's like, but we know the joy of sharing, all of us. And so that's in a way its own reward. And Master also said it's the only treasure that increases the more you give it away. So, Why did they pick this time? Because of this transition from Kali Yuga into Dwapara Yuga, this ascending change in times. And if you don't believe that it's Dwapara Yuga, then just pick up your mobile phone and look at it. And it will tell you it's Dwapara Yuga right now. Because how can we do all the things that we can do with these little devices? I mean, when we saw Star Trek and they had their little things that they would do, it looks a lot like an iPhone, doesn't it? Just do. Can't quite get beamed up yet, but other than that, still.
The ones that do kind of scan people.
Yeah, in fact, like the Google devices and other things, they can, I mean, even Facebook, when you load it up, and it just, if you look at a picture and then you hover it, would you like to tag a picture of some friend of yours? It knows that's your friend. What's funny is sometimes the pictures of Master, it says, would you like to tag Jyotish Novak? Swami Jyotish. Somehow it always sees this picture and thinks, in my Facebook, thinks that it's Jyotish every time. So that's why they picked this time, and you have to understand the magnitude of this, because we are celebrating the first year anniversary here. And as I was joking with Ashwini for saying, if anybody says, no, where are you going on Sunday morning, just say that your friend has a 1-year birthday for the child kind of thing. First year birthday, baby birthday. But on the one hand, it's very sweet to survive to 1 year, and on the other hand, it is only 1 year. None of us in this room are 1 year old. We've managed to pass 2 and even 3. And so there is a long life, and there's a much bigger picture involved. This work was started by a line of 5 avatars. And normally, I mean, I don't want to say you're lucky if you get 1, but I mean, in a certain way that's true. And here we have 5 coming to set a pattern for the new age. And we are a part of that. But I wanted to read a little bit from Swamiji's book, Paramhansa Yogananda, a biography. If you haven't read this book, I urge you to read it. It was written near the end of his life. In fact, when he came to India, no, I guess not. When he came to India the year before he came to Chennai, he launched this book at his first stop in Mumbai. And so he mentioned that Master often said that in a past life, Master was William the Conqueror. And he changed the whole face of Western civilization in that incarnation that was in the 11th century, the 1000s. And he brought England closer to the rest of Europe, which also affected the flow of spirituality and everything. And some historians today have said we owe everything we are in Western civilization to William the Conqueror, meaning the good points. And so the Master said that, and Swamiji often reflected, why would he pick that incarnation? It's one thing to say that he was Arjuna in a past life, which he also said, also a great warrior that also affected the flow of civilization. But William the Conqueror, and it's because Swami realized Master was saying, this work that I have brought will change the face of civilization. When we're too close to it at the beginning, we don't necessarily notice that. When you're with your 1-year-old baby, you don't necessarily think, now, are you going to understand calculus well enough or not? You understand derivatives and integrals, they undo. You don't think that. You just think, and people come by and say, oh, how cute. And that's about as much impression it makes. But when you find a great soul or a great champion in any field, and you think back, what did they look like when they were 1? Just little chinnakutis. But what comes from that seed is tremendous. And so Swamiji writes, Paramhansa Yogananda's legacy is destined in many respects to be world-transforming. His influence will go infinitely beyond the borders of his own little organization. And that's something to consider too, that the avatars have come to renovate this world, you could say. And to the extent that we participate, to the extent that we cooperate and enter into that flow, we will be able to serve as channels for that, but also we ourselves will be uplifted. But they will do it with or without us. That's one thing Swamiji pointed out, at one time. I don't know if people were feeling rather proud about Ananda or something, but he wanted to emphasize, in a certain sense, the impersonality of the divine. It has come to create a new wave. And it says, will you come? And then, if we do, we get to be a part of the party. It's pretty simple. I mean, invitations go out everywhere. And if you answer them, you get to come. And if you don't, well, you were invited. And I don't mean it in a heavy way, but the party is going on anyway. Obviously, being so close to the time when Master lived and so close to the time that Swamiji lived, we have a great opportunity to move forward with at least our own clarity. Because we have recordings of Swamiji. We know what he said. We have recordings of him telling us what Master said. And more than that, he brought Master's living presence to us. How is it that so many of us feel that we know Master? Beyond just from reading Autobiography of a Yogi and beyond just our personal prayers to him, which we may have given even before coming to Ananda, it's through Swamiji. He carried that living presence. And that's the role of the disciple, is to nurture and transmit that energy, that living presence, that blessing. That's the role of every disciple. Not just the direct disciple. Not just the great disciple, but every disciple. We do it for our own freedom. We don't do it, hi, I'm here to give you Yogananda. Some people do that. That's not it's not for our own glory. It's not even for his own glory. It's for the sake of helping and sharing joy with others. So, what is this legacy? Because again, one thing that we can also, as disciples, one aspect of discipleship is very personal. My relationship with my guru, my relationship with my Guru Bhais, my relationship with Swamiji, my sort of just enjoyment, and especially in the beginning, often my relief at finally having found my spiritual family, finally having found a meditation technique that is changing my life. Some people come to Ananda and they spend the first year pretty much laughing, just in relief and just in joy. I was a little bit like that myself. Just, wow, I always felt like an alien on this planet, and now I found all the other aliens. And so now we're fine. And so at the same time, then we also go through a lot of letting go of old patterns and old habits and old griefs. And sometimes you can spend the first year weeping also, just kind of in catharsis of just letting go of all of those things. So it's a healing and transformative time, and it just gets better. So it isn't as if, well, once the first year is over, then we're done growing. It ends up being an ever new joy and journey. But at the same time, there is a greater, beyond personal aspect of the Guru's work. This is a trap that some of Yogananda's own disciples fell into by his own words. He said to Swamiji, of all the men, disciples, every one of them, except Saint Lin, who was his most advanced disciple, every one of them has disappointed me. And he said, and you mustn't disappoint me, to Swamiji. And Swamiji thought, wow, I mean, what could that mean? Because first of all, he knew that the men were not disappointments in themselves. Then spiritually, they were great souls. But he realized that none of them had taken Master's mission seriously with a sense of personal responsibility. And others among Swami's early group were saying, one of them said in particular, I noticed that we just liked being around him. But he was busy giving programs. He was busy writing books. He was busy teaching classes, and we were just kind of following him around and basking. And she said, I realized that one of the marks of friendship is to take an interest in what your friend is doing. In other words, he was pushing all this energy, and she said, like kids, we were all just tagging along. Now, that is a natural stage. But if we only remain there without personally feeling the joy or having the guts to stand at PVR with a poster with Finding Happiness, which it was funny, I noticed all of us when we first, I don't know what was in anyone's mind, but I saw we were all kind of clustered around our table when we first got there. And I thought, well, we probably, though it's fun to be together, we should probably also let the other people know. So I grabbed a poster and a few others joined me and we all just stood here. And then we realized, well, we're greeting all the people after they've bought their movie tickets already. So we should probably go over here before they've gotten to the ticket counter. So then we went over here. And it was very sweet because, you know, I mean, a few, I don't know if they were thinking this of our own, were kind of like, are we really doing this? Like, sometimes you can remember, like, I remember the last time I did this, I got stoned, you know, in 500 BC. So, okay. But then it was very sweet, forgive me, Sharmila, but it was very sweet to see her. She put on her whole physician healer demeanor and just went up to, hi, how are you? Would you like to come see this movie? And people would go, you know, they would just feel that. She just very sweetly engaged, but confidently engaged different ones. I'll come back tomorrow and so on. I'm already coming to see Planet of the Apes today. So, but as I said, though we have such a sweet, intimate connection too, there is a bigger picture going on. And so Swamiji writes, Master encouraged people to come together in communities. This he did repeatedly and sometimes fervently, almost from the very beginning. I myself have built 8 such communities so far, in which altogether about 1,000 people live. And he goes on to share the words that Master said at the Beverly Hills Garden Party. This day marks the birth of a new era. I am sowing my thoughts in the ether, and my words shall not die. Thousands of youths must go north, south, east, and west to spread this concept of world brotherhood colonies. And so there were many reasons for Master putting this message out there, but this was coming not only from one avatar, but as the culmination of all the avatars' work. When Swamiji was dedicating the Ananda Palo Alto community in the 1990s, he came down from Ananda village. This was, in a certain sense, the first major community of its kind in this particular form. And he just got up, and of course everyone was excited in a certain way of here we are in Palo Alto, Silicon Valley, and we've got our community in the city where all people can see us and meet us, and we can go beyond Ananda village. And he was talking in big terms of, well, if you were Christ and if you were Babaji and you wanted to send a mission, how would you do it? He would say, well, we want to give them Kriya Yoga because they're ready for it and they want it. Both are there. You need both. My dad said to me once, you have all the perfect talents to become an excellent businessman. And I said, except one, desire. So in other words, we have to be ready and we have to want Kriya. Also, anything. That desire directs willpower, directs energy. So he said, Swamiji said, Babaji and Christ would say, well, they're going to need to be together, to encourage each other, to create a focal point so that this power will grow and spread. So they're going to need communities. And then he went on to say, and where would it be a good place for a community? Well, certainly, on the one hand, it would be nice to have it just in the forest where no one can find it. But on the other hand, it might be nice to plant it right where all the eyes of the world are looking. Like, how about Silicon Valley? And so, let it be so. And so you can imagine Babaji and Christ and the Masters taking a very active interest in every new community that's formed. Again, this communities movement, well, they won't all be Ananda communities. As Swamiji put it, he said, yeah, that would be an administrative nightmare. But this model of community, which you saw in Finding Happiness, and which you are experiencing in the friendship and the energy that's growing here, is something that other people can look to and say, okay, we see how it's done, and so on. Swamiji also points out, schools everywhere are causing anxiety among parents who feel their children are being overburdened with knowledge. A serious problem is that children are taught, whether explicitly or implicitly, that life has no meaning. In fact, modern education is basically atheistical. And the ideals Yogananda held for child education could not be perfected during his lifetime. But he said, Swamiji added, I have been able, however, to create his type of schools on 3 continents, and their impact promises to be enormous, at a time when people everywhere are losing faith in modern educational methods. Remember, Master's first building in America, Mount Washington, which is now his headquarters, his original charter for it was that it become a school. He wanted it to be a school for children, because he was showing that education is so important, and the right kind of education. Of course, it couldn't work as a school, because what parents will say, oh yes, Mr. Indian with long hair and in foreign accent, sure, I'll send my kids to your school. I mean, the parents had to understand that the benefit of these teachings before they would risk their children on it, and so on. And so, of course, that did happen in time through Swamiji's efforts. Number 3, Yogananda's writings embrace a wide array of important topics that are bound to become greatly influential. And he goes on to list so many of them. The Science of Religion, which Swamiji rewrote as the book God is for Everyone. Master didn't actually write the book. He dictated it to a disciple, gave his ideas, and that disciple wrote them all out in a very academic, scholarly language that I myself have to confess. Science of Religion, Master's first book. It was hard to get past chapter 1. And Swamiji heard enough of these complaints from people, and someone suggested, sir, why don't you re-edit the book, since Master didn't even have a chance to write it himself. So, Scientific Healing Affirmations, Whispers from Eternity, his commentaries on the life of Jesus Christ, and his commentaries on the Gita. Swamiji then continues, I believe his life will also change society in far-reaching ways. It will make business in general aware that success is most surely theirs who put service ahead of gain. Will make businesses aware. And he talks about the Dwapara Yuga bringing in a fluid and less fixed attitude, even in business. He continues, home life everywhere has been suffering, as new life directions divide couples that once would have walked in the same direction together. Yogananda brought so much clarity to the very purpose of life that these forks in life's road will become less and less frequent. This is important to remember too, because we often see that if you agree on your core values in a friendship, for example, or in a relationship, then you can handle just about any test or challenge that there is, because on fundamentals you're agreed. And that's one thing that you'll find among some of the friendships you can develop here, is because you know that it's not that we all have the same personality or that we all automatically gel together, but because we agree on the fundamental issues to the extent that we do, everything else follows. And he goes on and continues then by saying, overall, basic social attitudes will change and will bring greater harmony to mankind everywhere. And then quoting the Gita, whenever virtue declines and vice is in the ascendant, I incarnate myself as an avatar. Appearing from age to age in visible form, I come to destroy evil and to re-establish virtue. Such, finally, is the legacy of Paramhansa Yogananda. The world will become a better place because he lived. So, that is what we're celebrating here. And we're now going to take a brief walk down memory lane. And so you will see the little Chinna Kuti Center in its first little toddling steps. And it will be very cute. But also remember that how thrilled the masters are that Swamiji could come here and that all of you could respond and to come. All those that have come, all those that are coming, all those that would have loved to be here today but for traveling or whatever else, that Swamiji said the potential in Chennai is enormous based on his first lecture here. So we will bring up the slides. It all began with Swamiji, as you know, coming to Chennai in January of 2013, and after his talk, he sent out an email to a few friends and said, well, Chennai was a success. There were people standing all around the sides of the room, about 400 people standing in the lobby watching my talk on a video screen, and 1,000 people turned away for lack of space. Altogether at least 3,000 people. The enthusiasm was so high there were crowds around the book table even 2 hours later. The hopes for building a large work in Chennai are soaring. I thought you'd like to know. Love, Swami. And so, again, as many of you know the story, that night he wrote to us and said, can you please move to Chennai? And we wrote back and said, as much as we wanted to say, yes, sir, we wanted to be able to be emotionally ready to say that, we said, well, okay, we'll think about it very carefully. And so he wrote back about 12 hours later saying, have you thought about it? Any chances? And so we said, we are, so he wrote again 2 hours later.
His first email at 3 a.m. or something?
Yeah, the first, because again, the first email was daytime here, but it was the middle of the night for us, but we happened to see it soon after. But so then 2 hours later, okay, how about now? And so we could feel his enthusiasm and we could feel the potential. And so a few months later, you can move to the next one, we were able to just move here and immediately land. This is my cousin's house, and they live in Mylapore right off of R.K. Sally. And so, we very gently said, so we're coming to Chennai. And they very politely said, well, would you like to stay with us until you get a place? And so we said, thank you, because they were our only cousins in Chennai. And it was wonderful. We both, of course, had known them before. Some of you met them at the Finding Happiness premiere on Sunday. So our first classes were in Asha Nivas. This was 2 days after we landed, and this is the smallest room in Asha Nivas, which some of you have been in for classes. And this was a level 2 class that was already happening. I don't know if you recognize. This is Rajesh. No, I'm kidding. Everybody. That was the first people we met in that beginning session. And this was our elaborate altar. You may recognize, of course, those photos from in the puja room. Then we had a satsang that first time, and this is, anyone can guess? That's Rama. Yeah, well, you don't have to recognize everybody from the backs of their head, but I'm glad that you do. But this was the Rama's first conversation about the miracles that she's experienced on this path. And then this was a group of different ones who had come for the satsang. And then there was a level 4 class that was already over. The ones prepared, people who actually prepared for Kriya, ready for Kriya, but we had to delay the initiation. And so, because Haridas and Roma couldn't come here as scheduled to give it, because Swamiji had passed away, which was changed everybody's schedule, obviously. So we met with those who were already ready for Kriya and reviewed a few more things that way. And this was at Karthik's mother's house, grandmother's house, and we joked because the little sign off this little lane said hot puffs, and even the sign was, there was huge Pepsi and then this tiny little hot puffs sign, and so we said look for the hot puffs, and by some miracle people were able to find it. And so that was that. Again, you can see the traveling altar. Okay. And then this was the discipleship initiation for those who had come to Swamiji's talk and then were following through all the classes and so on. And you can go to the next one. And, okay. And then we found the center. And there was a very long process of, we found the center immediately, even before we left America, but it took a while before we could get here and see it. It took a while before the owners were in a position, because they'd had some family trouble, disruption I mean, to be able to then meet with us and so on. And this is, I'm standing almost right where I was standing in the photo. You see, it looks very different. And actually, you can go ahead. Yeah. So this was the first satsang that we had at the center. And we weren't going to even have a satsang because the center just wasn't ready. And then at the last minute, in discussions, we said, okay, we'll find a way to get it ready. And so we did a big push, and here, such as it was the satsang. So you can go to the next one. And one more. Okay, yeah, the iPhoto is doing things a little bit clever with the photos that I won't bother fixing right now. But again, this was the first altar. I mean, it's just amazing when you look at that, the seed, and then you look at this. I mean, it's just so beautiful what has grown. Okay, so then this was preparing for the center's dedication. So this was July 20th. Was when this was taken. The dedication was the 21st. This is Sai Ganesh, who lives in Ananda, Palo Alto. But he's from Chennai, and of course he returned to Chennai for a wedding. And so then while he was here, he said, let me come and help you. Do you have anything going on? And we said, would you like to lay out the books? And so this is the diwan there that of course now has a mattress and everything. And Pankaj is from Pune, and he was living in Chennai for a long time, but he was a part of Ananda Pune. And so this is Prem doing the magic Prem thing. We were used to joke, he doesn't even need to stand on a chair to do this. He had a little stool, but otherwise he's so tall he can just reach up and clean the fan blades. And he'll be back in a few months from Africa. And this was the first altar. The altar had just arrived. We set it up, and it was the first group meditation that we had at the center, was after the cleaning and so on. Okay, so then we have a few clips of the dedication. And the audio isn't great, so it's more about the feeling than picking up every word or sound or something.
Jai Guru, Jai Guru, Jai Guru, Jai. 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 Jai Guru, Jai Guru, Jai Guru, Jai.
That chapter has awakened many spiritual seekers. As Swamiji explained, it's very seldom has an enlightened master described the experience of cosmic consciousness in so much detail, and also in English.
I don't think we can all fit, but anyway, whatever happens, happens. Grab some food. maybe the chairs can be moved to the side so there's a little bit more room to move around.
Thank you all.
And then these are just a few, I won't go through the entire year, but these are just a few snapshots because some of you came at different points in the year. And so even some of these things that happened before, we thought it'd be nice just to see. So this was the first Kriya initiation, which again, as I said, had been postponed. But the great joy of it being postponed was that then it could take place in the center. And so after the center dedication, the next weekend we had a Kriya initiation, which if you think about it, if you're starting a center, how do you start a center and then a week later have a Kriya initiation? It's supposed to take a little more time than that. But of course it was for all the students who had been preparing themselves. And Haridas and Roma came down from Bangalore to do the initiation, and Roma said, this is the real center dedication. Because Kriya ceremonies are so powerful, as you can imagine. This is what the masters have come to bring. And that they could hold it until the center could then receive that blessing instead of just a hotel room or a Ashanivas classroom or something. But the center really, the energy went up tremendously after that. So this is a picture of them doing the Sunday satsang the next day. This picture, just because the other picture of Rajesh was so grim, I thought you might like to see. This was a very special day, and he's here because he had brought all the flowers that day. And a level 1 class where you may recognize a few friends. This was I think our second level 1 class that we'd had in Ashanivas that time. And then we were very fortunate to be blessed by Nayaswami Dhyana coming down, and as you know, she's coming next week. And next week will be her 4th visit here. So she has made a point of coming to Chennai again and again to share with you all. And this was a happy moment there too. And so we had, both Dharmini and I were thrilled at the altars and the beautiful decorations and everything that everyone has given. This was for Lahiri Mahashaya's birthday and Mahasamadhi. They're so close together in September, so it was really special. iPhoto is doing its cutting off of the head trick, but you can see this is by the necks you can see this is Bhaskar, this is Karthik. So this was the inauguration of the first choir. This was the first choir practice. And this was a level 2 group. As I said, Prem is quite tall. I think Master is enjoying himself through iPhoto. I had deliberately prepared all of these so carefully. Anyway, there it is. This was a level 2 batch. The funny thing too is, the kitchen is right there, but we were saying, we've got to get a curtain, because otherwise the kitchen was a part of every class, every satsang. Okay. People would, can I get something to eat in the middle of the talk? And so then Jyotish and Devi were coming. And we went on a big campaign to spread the word about their visit. Now this is in November. And so this was part of our marketing meeting, and so many of these were handed out. We sent out phone calls, a lot of the same things we do now, but this was leading up to that.
And they're coming in March.
This year, next time they're coming in March.
And they'll be giving a Kriya initiation also.
And yet many of you will also see them in November at Babaji's cave too.
Yeah.
So that's nice too. I just love this picture because this was our stuffing of the envelope, the welcome packets to give to people, but somehow just the Rajesh and the everything, it just gives you the feeling, even the scissors are there, just of what it was. This again looks better when you see the whole picture, but that's okay, we can. So then, when Jyotish and Devi came, we had a little dinner with them. This is what often happens when people come is, in a way it would be nice to have dinner with them after everything was over, but so often as soon as they're done they have to go on to the next stop. So even when Dhyana comes, we're going to try, not Dhyana, but when Jaya and Sadhana come, we're going to try to have a little dinner with them too. It's just a nice way to get together and spend time. So it's the middle of a weekday, and I know...
It's the first Wednesday in September.
Yeah. that's the hard part about it, is it's a weekday, but in case you're free.
If we make that dinner, we usually meet about 6 or 6:30 at that restaurant. It's called Tuscana. If it's open by then.
Yeah. So this was the talk, their day, the day of their talk. It was really quite an inspiration. It's online. You can relive it or watch it for the first time if you haven't. And then the next day, they answered, you can go ahead. The next day they did spiritual questions and answers in the morning in place of the Sunday satsang. It was at the same venue. This is the next morning. And so many people came together to decorate the altar and do so many things. And so they took questions from the audience. And so this was one nice question from one nice audience member. And then going on, then they did a Kriya initiation. This was the second Kriya initiation here in the center. So this was the screening of Finding Happiness at the Four Frames Theater in Nungambakkam, and this was Mr. Karthikeyan introducing Jyotish and Devi and Shivani, the producer of the film, and many of you got to see it there, but almost all of you got to see it in the theater last weekend. And it was a very sweet experience there. And that's, you recognize Hashi Mukherjee. And then Surendra and Tushti came from Ananda, Pune, also to visit us down here. And we had a very fun Christmas tree decorating party. That was a sweet aspect of entering the Christmas season down here. And this was the beginning of the Christmas meditation, and that is an 8-hour meditation that goes from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. A tradition master started. And yeah, and it was very, very deep experience. And this photo you might have just seen if you happen to open the newsletter. This was the New Year's Day. Karthik taking a picture of me, taking a picture of Karthik. And you remember well Hashi and her son Manash when they came and visited, if you were here. And it was a very sweet experience. When Jaya came, he also did the Tuscana ritual of the dinner beforehand. So again, as Dharmini said, first Wednesday in September, keep the schedule free if you can, or arrange to have a mild cough that day. And he gave us a wonderful satsang here. And then many of you were there for the program Dhyana and Jaya did together in Asha Nivas on healing. Some of you came for the first time at that time. And this was a fun moment at lunch. Also, Yogindra and Gitanjali came from Italy. So, I mean, we were feeling pretty privileged that people were coming from all over India to visit the center, but then they came all the way from Italy. So that was nice. And this was another level 2 group. And we had a very fun Shivaratri with a Mahamrityunjaya that went on and on and on 108 times and so on. It was really quite an experience. And the next one, there was a beautiful thing Purni did right here. And then one of our recent visit by Karpani and Dhyana again. This was Dhyana also blessing a bangle, one of your bangles that she blessed. And that was great. And so again, it's all thanks to Swamiji's vision. So, God bless you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sharmila, Gita, Sujata, Neil, and blessings on you.
Let's send some healing, good, positive birthday blessings to the birthday children here.
it
did.
in
We
there.
said Ananda Chennai. Do you want to
Okay,
blow
how
it
about
all
this?
at once?
We'll blow it all at once, and if you feel you can fake blowing. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Here, touch the knife.
Yeah.
Touch the knife.
That's such a big knife. We can all fit here. Put your finger on the edge of the knife. There we go. Okay.
Yay!